Hey folks, I'm making this video to give everyone a quick update since I haven't posted anything in a while. If you haven't seen my previous videos, I've been developing a GameCube game using my own multi-platform game engine. In the last video, I mentioned that I had the game running on Wii, but there were still quite a few fixes that I needed to make in order to get it into a truly playable state. And aside from that, the game would crash when you ran it on GameCube because it would run out of memory as soon as you hit the overworld level. So anyway, that was the plan. But while playtesting my game on Android, I realized that it really is more of a mobile game. I don't think I would have fun sitting down, booting up a console, and playing it there, or even on a handheld console, or even on PC. It really does seem like a mobile game at its heart. And that's how I've been playing it mostly. Whenever I have a few minutes between something or when I'm waiting for something, I open up my phone, launch the app, and play a match or two. And I have had fun doing that. So I don't think it's like really a terrible game or anything, but I think that is definitely mobile oriented. So I'm just going to leave it on Android for now. I might come back and make a more official release later, but for now I'm basically suspending development on it. But that means I have more time to work on Octave, which is great. But the reason I haven't posted anything in a while is because I've just been busy with real life stuff. I got a new job, I had to relocate, and I'm getting familiar with a new area. I like the new job. All my teammates are really cool. They're fun to work with. But it was definitely stressful looking for a new job because I had to do leak code practice, and I suck at leak code. It could take me more than an hour to solve a medium problem if I do solve it. And yeah, it's not fun. Interviewing isn't that fun either. It can't be, but I get nervous. And so I'm glad it's over. And good luck to anyone who is in that process right now because it's not necessarily the most fun thing. But now I've gotten into more of a routine, so I think I'm ready to make some updates again and start working more often on the game engine. My goal is to get the engine into a state where people can actually make games with it. So I have a short list of things I need to do in order to get the engine into that state, but before I do that, I just want to go through some of the changes that I've been able to make on the engine since my last update. So the first big change is that I ditched the actor component paradigm, and now I'm using a node system like Godot. Actors, components, and even widgets are all just nodes now, and it simplified the code a lot. It simplified some of the assets. Levels, blueprints, and widget maps are all just scene assets now, and you can even mix in widgets into a 3D scene. And as a side effect to this, you can actually render 3D scenes on the bottom screen on 3DS. In the past, you could only render 2D widgets there. The second thing I worked on is true type font importing. So previously, you would have to go to a website and upload your TTF and then convert it to a bitmap font, and then you'd have to upload an image and also an XML file. But now it's much simpler. You can just import the TTF directly in the editor. The next thing that I worked on is totally converting the editor to use the Dear MGUI library for rendering all of its user interface. And it is way nicer now. It's much easier to use. You can click and drag stuff. You can use the color selector. It is just so much better. It's a much better quality of life. So I think if you use the engine ever, you'll be glad that I did that. And after that, I worked on a custom material system, at least for the Vulkan side of things, where you can write your own shaders, and then your materials can select those shaders to use, and you can set the parameters that they use in the editor, and you can make different material instances that override those parameters. And yeah, it'll hopefully give you a lot more control if you're doing things on the PC side of development. And if you're running on console, well, consoles can only use what I call light materials, which are basically the old legacy default materials that have a very fixed function. And if your game happens to load a base material or material instance, it will check to see, first of all, if the platform can even use that material. And if it can't, then it will fall back to a light material, which will work on all platforms. And this custom material system is still in beta, essentially. It's an experimental feature, but hopefully one day it will become robust enough to where we can actually use it for creating cool materials in the game for PC side of things. And even maybe one day we'll be able to make our own custom materials on consoles too. The only problem there is that we would need to make different compilers for each platform to be able to convert the shader graph into the texture combiner operations needed to run on those systems. And of course, they'll still be very limited to whatever the hardware can do, but it would still give a lot of flexibility, hopefully. And the last thing I worked on is a Bomberman demo game that's written fully in Lua. It's not completed yet, but it gives you an idea of how to create different objects and how to interact with them and some examples of scripting. And so if you want to make a game, you can reference that, and hopefully it helps a little bit. It also has networking support, I think. At least I think I finished getting that set up. But the game still isn't complete, like I said, so you actually can't kill their players yet, but you can at least plant bombs and blow up boxes and get power-ups and walk around and stuff. But like I said, it's really just to serve as a reference, which kind of leads me to the next topics I want to talk about, which is what I need to do next. Because having that demo game is nice to be able to look at the scripts, but it's really not a good resource for learning. So what I need to do next, I think, is to make a tutorial, and like one where I actually show all the steps, and I have it recorded, and I'm typing the code, and I'm using the editor and showing exactly how to import stuff. And I think that would be really useful for people. And so I want to make an in-depth tutorial for a simple game. So I'm thinking something like Flappy Bird. And yeah, that's the most important thing I need to do, I think, right now. But then after that, the next important thing is to make Lua documentation, because right now there's no documentation. The only documentation is to go into the C++ files where I'm doing the bindings and just look for the functions. Actually, they are listed pretty well in the header files, so they are kind of split up, but you can find the function lists for each table, and you can go into the C++ files and see how I'm using the parameters and what types they are. So it's not ideal, and it's going to take you time to look through that. So what I really need to do is create like some sort of web documentation where you can just go and find the functions you're looking for, and I'll already list like what the parameters are, what types they should be, and like, are these degrees, radians, or is this world space or local space? You know, things like that. That would be really helpful. So yeah, that's probably going to take a while though, and it's not going to be a fun thing for me at least, but something I really need to do. And I'll have to look at some references of other Lua libraries and see how they're doing their documentation, because I might like base what I do off of that. But I think I'll have to write this by hand because it's all embedded, and I don't know an easy way to generate it from the embedded bindings. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, after I finish the tutorial and then the Lua documentation, I think the game engine will be in a place where people can actually start making games. And I'm sure it's going to be quite rocky at first, where people hit a lot of crashes and bugs, but I'll try to get those addressed as fast as possible, and I'm not going to add any new features until it's in a stable state. But once it is in a stable state, then I'll start working on features again, because I have a decent list of features that I think would make the engine way better to use, like an animation sequencer, a vertex painter. Yeah, actually, I'm looking at my list right now, and there's a lot of features, so I'm not going to list them all here. But I will be working on improving the engine eventually, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So anyway, thank you for taking the time to watch and listen, and I will hopefully have that tutorial up soon. So yeah, look forward to that, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again. Bye.